Stand up here.
Let me put it like this. I will once I turn the camera on.
No, the audio should be without the camera.
I know I have the bars,
Okay.
but you said when I.
No, that's all I wanted to know.
Cool, and that wind, that hawk.
Yeah, that's cold.
Yep. I couldn't believe I had snow on my car this morning.
Oh, we were coming in and it was snowing.
Really? Wow.
Closer we got to the house, the harder it got. It's like, wow. I mean, they
Imagine
roofs were
a
covered.
spiritual
This morning
process
it's going
offers
out.
universal truth.
Going out like the Republicans.
Okay. Hey.
Imagine a movement that respects each person's right to choose their spiritual path. Imagine a spiritual movement that empowers and unites rather than divides. This is unity. For more than a century, Unity has offered a positive, practical, and progressive approach to understanding and applying the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. Unity is non-dogmatic and inclusive. Are you a Christian with questions, or just spiritually seeking? Are you curious to explore the universal truths that Jesus embodied and taught, concepts that extend beyond traditional Christian theology? Learn how unity bridges Eastern and Western philosophy, and how it can change your life. Experience God consciousness.
Yeah, what about that one person? Yeah. It takes its toll. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, I should do. Thank you. Hi.
Good morning.
Yeah, I was going to tell you.
Good morning.
Good morning. They wouldn't let her have a sleepover. They said they didn't want to talk about the environment.
Okay, Patricia, I'm gonna hand over the phone.
Okay.
Good morning to all of you. Thank you for being here, on time and in perfect order. Namaste and welcome, visitors and members, to Unity of Chicago South Spiritual Community, where a non-traditional message is delivered in this non-traditional space each Sunday as we celebrate Christ's consciousness. Follow along as I read the UCS Declaration found at the top of the left inside of your bulletin. UCS is a community where the development of spirituality through the daily application of practical Christianity in our life and affairs supersedes dogma, creeds, and superstition. UCS is a community where we practice the 5 core unity principles, which you will find right under the UCS Declaration. Please join in and let's read the 5 principles together. Number 1, God is the omnipresence and power active in the universe. Number 2, everything is an individualized expression of God. Number 3, through the power of thinking, we activate divine energy that expresses as emotions and manifests as conditions. In this way, we create life's experiences. Number 4, through prayer and meditation, we come into a direct awareness of the presence of God. And number 5, knowing the truth is not enough.
We must integrate action with insight to evolve, transform, and create positive, sustainable change in our world.
Our congregational song can be found on the right-hand side of the bulletin. Please join in.
God is my source, God is my power, God gives me everything I need. So I give thanks for all my blessings, God gives me everything I need. All right, let's do it. God is my source, God is my power, God gives me everything I need. So I give thanks for all my blessings. God gives me everything I need. God is my source. God is my power. God gives me everything I need. So I give thanks for all my blessings. God gives me everything I gives me everything I need. So I give thanks for all my blessings. Love gives me everything I need. Joy is my source. Joy is my power. Joy gives me everything I need. So I give thanks for all my blessings. Joy gives me everything I need. Peace is my source. Peace is my power. Peace gives me everything I need. So I give thanks for all my blessings. Peace gives me everything I need. God is my source. God is my power. God gives me everything I need. So I give thanks for all my blessings. God gives me everything I need. God gives me everything I need. God gives me everything I need.
Everything. Please join along with me as I read. You can read silently on the horizon. This week, Reverend Dr. Stephanie will give our talk. don't need to know about Google Docs. You know how to do Google Docs. So that's what you missed.
Okay.
Okay. And to that end, we will have a brief gathering. I don't want to call it a meeting afterwards to just go over a couple of things. But actually, I can talk about them real quick since we're in the announcements. People have been asking a couple of questions that we need to address. They want to know how much a table's going to be. So we have some folks that have already inquired about being a part of this event, and we also need to put together a budget. So those are things that need to be in place that we can work on together, but we know we need to address those issues. Cost of tables and then a budget, putting together a budget of the things that we're going to need out there and then pricing them out and doing that whole bit. With that said, thank you so much as we move on.
Night turn cold, the stars look down, and you hug yourself on the cold, cold ground. You wake the morning in a stranger's cold, no one would just see. You ask yourself, watch for me, my only friend. Who could it be? It's hard to say it, I hate to say it, it's probably me. When your belly is empty, the hunger's so real, you're too proud to beg, you're too dumb to steal. You search the city for your only friend, no one would just see. You ask yourself, who could it be? A solitary voice
this time where we quiet ourselves and we center ourselves on that peaceful place within us, that closet that no one can enter but ourselves, the Christ, the source vibration, whatever we want to refer it to. Only we have the key to go inside. The weekly affirmation of truth. Let us take a deep breath, cleanse, release. Let us bring all of those that participated in the burning bowl. The letters are there to be mailed out today. Let's bring them in our consciousness. Let's bring in all of the folks that have ever been a part of Unity of Chicago South, and whatever consciousness they may be in right now, let's bring them in. Let's acknowledge, deep within me lies a truth that is unshakable and without equal. It is sealed behind the door that is unlocked by faith and held open with strength. This truth is my truth. In the darkness of a moment or in the midst of a great joy, it is a truth beyond all that I can see, beyond all that my senses can comprehend. The truth of God, invisible creative energy, spirit, divine presence, or whatever name used for the source of me, is me. That source is the originating energy behind all that exists. The truth of that source does not change according to the perceived storms and trials in my outer experience. The truth that is me is my power to withstand the external bombardments of this physical experience called life. Without faith in its presence, I short-circuit its full expression in my life, affairs, and world. I build my faith in the daily silent contact with this indwelling truth. I strengthen my connection the more I lean on it with expectation for it to express as my guide and support. In this moment, and without reservation, I declare this to be my truth. So it is, and all is well. Let's take that into consciousness. I build my faith in the daily strength, this daily silent contact with this indwelling truth. I strengthen my connection the more I lean on it with expectation for it to express as my guide and support. In this moment, and without reservation, I declare this to be my truth. And as we come back to this place, refreshed, strengthened by our faith in the divinity of ourselves, let us focus on today's message, knowing that it brings enlightenment, it brings joy, and it brings guidance and hope. We know that it is so, and so it is. All the way.
away all the lies and all the songs you let me write. Doesn't matter I am today. Say the words you need to say. Let them see you in me. Let them hear you when I speak. Let them feel you when I sing. Let them see you. Let them see you in me. Who am I without your grace? Another smile, another face, another breath, a grain of sand, passing quickly through your hand. I give my life an offering. Take it all, take everything. Let them see you in me. Let them hear you when I speak. Let them feel you when I sing. Let them see you. Just let them see you in me. With every breath I breathe, I sing a simple melody. Will pray they'll hear more than a song in me, in me. Let them see you in me. Let them hear you when I speak. Let them feel you when I sing. Let them see you. Whoa, let them see you in me. Let them hear you when I speak. Let them feel you when I sing. Let them see you. Let them see you in me. Let them see you in me.
It's a nice song.
Very nice.
Thing is, they always see. They always see what we think about you, God. Whenever we walk and talk, they see what we think God is. I know you didn't know that. You thought they were looking at you. Well, sometimes an introduction can be long or it can be short. In the case of the speaker today, it's a long introduction that we're going to shorten. She has so many accolades so many accomplishments, so many achievements that we're very fortunate to have her as a part of Unity of Chicago South. We thank her for being here. We thank her so much that we're going to join her as she walks across the stage to receive her doctorate again. She already has it, but now she's going to have pictures and stuff. You know, so those folks that think, now she can show the pictures. And you don't have to thank anymore. Here it is. All right? It's so appropriate that Women's Month, the month to honor women, should be finalized with an outstanding female author, speaker, professional, Reverend Doctor, what else? Husband, wife, what else? All of those
Mother,
things. Mother, grandmother, sister, everything. But we are honored to hear her today. We know that we are in for a wonderful, wonderful lesson, without a doubt. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up Reverend Dr. Stephanie Wilson Coleman, my co-host and co-heart and all that good stuff. Please, welcome.
So if you listen to the radio show, I'm the wild one, so.
We share that.
So before we get started, in keeping of a Catherine Ponder principle, and that's using your word and your voice to speak things into existence, I want you to turn to the person next to you or closest to you, and I want you to say, I am the person that I have been praying for. I want you to look into someone's eyes.
I am the person that I have been praying for.
And if it's to be,
And
if it's to be, it's up to me.
It's up to me.
So now I want you to find the person on the other side that's sitting there and says, oh, I have no partner. And I want you to do the same thing. I am the person that I've been praying for. And if it's to be, it's up to me.
It's up to me.
Thank you. So we are covering women in unity. And one of my favorite authors is Catherine Ponder. And I have lots of Catherine Ponder's books. This is The Dynamic Law of Prosperity, which is the first book that I read on my journey to truth. And is a book that I refer back to. And as I was refreshing myself for this lesson today, it's a book I need to read again. So to sort of put you in mind of what people think about metaphysics, there's this little joke I want to share. So on one day, a lonely, nerdy quantum physicist was sitting in a bar, intensely focused on the empty bar stool next to him. The bartender asked him what was he doing, and the physicist replied, I'm attempting to use the secret to shift myself into a parallel universe, one in which a beautiful woman is sitting on that stool next to me, talking to me, laughing with me. And the bartender replied, well, there are a lot of beautiful women here right now. Maybe one of them will come over and sit with you. To which the nerdy physicist replied, you're right. What are the odds of that happening? So how many times have we felt like that in our life? You know, oh man, that is really a cool car, for instance, you know. Oh, you said, well, why don't you do some work around getting that car? Oh yeah, what's the chance of that happening? I'm going to go over here with something else I can afford. How many times have we talked ourselves out of that job? So my initial introduction to unity and its metaphysical principles were through my grandmother. When I was growing up, I was very sickly, and I was actually raised by my grandparents. I was on a lot of medications. It wasn't a day when something was wrong. Either I was allergic to it or my nose was bleeding, but something was wrong. And all of the medications, I discovered I was really allergic to everything. They did tests for 170 things. I was allergic to 169. Okay? Everything took my hair out and broke my skin out, right? So as you can see right now today, when I have issues around hair, I have real issues around hair. So one day she started combing my hair and she would say these little statements that I now know to be affirmations. And I was at a point in life where she had to give me 2 injections a day So on her own, she's just started weaning me off the number of injections, saying these prayerful statements, and by the time I was 14, 15, I didn't have 70, 80% of those ailments anymore. And it was less medication, and it was the affirmative statements. So when I was moving out of the house after she died and I was clearing her bookcase, I found 3 original editions, 2 of Charles Fillmore books and 1 of Myrtle Fillmore books, which I keep now and I hide so well I get it for myself. Now, as I experienced this healing, I didn't know what caused it, didn't know what happened. I just went on about life as usual with all of its ups and downs, and there was a lot of downs and some ups and some mediocre rides, probably like everybody else. So in 1988, I was having some issues, and my aunt, who went to Christ Universal Temple, Helen Williams, had been going there since they had the P.O. box. So she asked one day, she says, can I send you some books to read? Now she knew I was an avid reader. I said, sure, send me some books to read. So I get this box of everything. Emmett Fox, Catherine Ponder, everything, right? And as I started reading, I was amazed because I felt like, and you know, by then in 1988, you know, I'd read everything, I knew everything. It's like this stuff couldn't be new, right? And these people were writing in like the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, so I'm wondering why didn't I know, right? So there's that saying that if you put it in a book, you hide it from people forever, but if you put it in a book, I'm going to find it, right? So I started with Catherine Ponder, and one of the first things I did is I'd written a list. In one of the books, she requires you to write a list of all the things that you want to do. And I called that All the Things I Want to Do and Experience and Be list. Shortly thereafter, I had a basal skull fracture, and they told me that I was going to die. I remember being in the emergency room. I couldn't talk, and I couldn't walk. And I remember being in the emergency room saying to myself, God, this is not on my list of things to do and people to do it with, okay? I remember saying that. So the long story short is in 8 days, I was released and able to go home. I wasn't able to drive, but my son taught me how to drive, taught me how to match colors again. And then they said, well, you're going to have epilepsy because nobody heals this well. So I don't have epilepsy. I don't have anything, you know. And then the neurologist said, what did you do? Who do you know? And I said, thinking about Catherine Ponder's list, you wouldn't believe me if I told you, right? So Catherine Ponder was born in North Carolina, and when you hear videos of her, she sounds like she is from the South. And she was once a minister at the Unity of Birmingham, which we had the opportunity to visit. Around 30 or so, she became a widow at a young age and had a young child to care for. And because her husband was a major breadwinner, she started studying prosperity principles. She became an ordained minister in 1958, and it became known as the Norman Vincent Peale among lady ministers. So I guess that was the proper thing to say during that time. Shortly after she got ordained, she began teaching the weekly prosperity course based upon Charles Fillmore's 1936 book of prosperity. So I thought, with all she's accomplished, we might need to teach that book again. Her first book was The Dynamic Laws of Prosperity, and it was released in 1962 in the U.S. and then in France in 1980, and it continues to ride on the bestseller list. Now, in The Dynamic Laws of Prosperity, Catherine Ponder says, you have to start with the basic principle of prosperity. So she states that the shocking truth of prosperity is that you have to desire prosperity. And it's shocking because if you look at what we have created, most of us have not been able to create that constant stream of prosperity. So it was shocking in 1927 when she was born. It was shocking in 58 when she was ordained. It was shocking in 62 when this book came out. And it is still shocking in 2019. She defines prosperity, and she's very clear. She says it defines as an abundance of good or living a fuller life, a most satisfying life. It includes peace, health, happiness, and plenty in our world. And she discovered that the problem people have with prosperity is that they're trying to resolve an old conflict of whether they should desire to be prosperous. And often people feel guilty about being prosperous. Now she goes further to define poverty as a sin. She says that poverty is actually a form of disease, and in its acute phases, it can be even a form of insanity. One of her close friends, who was a doctor, said that he has found in poverty that poverty fills most prisons and most of the ills of society. And today, with all of the research, we know by scientific research that this has been proven true. And that constant financial strain over a long period of time impairs your mind and bodies to the point of incapacity. It's estimated today that 90% of the ills in our society are caused by strain, misery, and the unhappiness of poverty. Wow. Okay. And that continues to be true. In my new book, I quote studies from the Poverty Unequality Society, who have lots of studies on that. Now, she goes even further to do the shocking truth. So if we think it's shocking now, it was really shocking in 1962. And that is, the Bible is actually a prosperity textbook. She says that most of the great men in the Bible were either prosperous or became prosperous or had access to prosperity. So she talked about Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, David, Solomon, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Nehemiah, Elijah, and Elisha of the Old Testament, and Jesus and Paul of the New Testament. That's all we hear about most of the stories in every church you go to. It's about these men, and they fail to remind us that these men became prosperous, were already prosperous, or had access to prosperity. She reminds us that Jesus' first miracle produced was the gift of the finest wine for a wedding feast. But we hear it, he just turned water to wine. She says it was the finest wine, which means this was the first miracle that demonstrated prosperity. She goes on to remind us that it was the feudal systems in the Middle Ages who wanted to assure that wealth was just set aside and reserved for the privileged, that began to teach poverty as a Christian virtue. So that's from the Middle Ages, and we're still hearing threads of that today about poverty, about you have to be poor in order to get into the gates of heaven. Now, the one thing that I like about Catherine Ponder over a lot of the other authors is she has lots of practical exercises in her books to help you actually manifest the things that you want to manifest in your life. She believes in speaking the word. She believes that your voice is more powerful than silently saying the affirmation, which a lot of us do. She wants you to speak it out loud. And one of the things she says that you should do is speak it for 15 minutes a day, even if it's in 5-minute increments. So it's not that you have to do it 15 minutes a day, so you can do it 3 or 4 times a day. So she says that in order to establish a prosperous attitude, she recommends that we paraphrase the words of Jehovah to Moses in Deuteronomy 8 chapter 18th verse that says, "But thou shalt remember Jehovah thy God, for it is he that giveth thee power to get wealth." She says, paraphrase it in your own words, and make that the statement that you live by, the statement that you write out, the statement that you repeat out every day. She also, in 1962, talked about the link of thought and supply. She states that God can only do for you what he can do through you, period. So nothing's falling out the sky, there's no burning bushes. It is going to be done through you. You are the person that you have been praying for. So she says that daily we should affirm, I stir up the gifts of God within me and around me, and I am blessed on every hand with happiness, success, and true achievements. And she goes further to remind us that our attitude, our mental concepts, our beliefs, and our outlook are all connected to God's prosperous, rich substance. That is what links us to it. That's what gives us the access to it, because since God can't do it except through us, we are its hands and feet, and we have to link our thought to the supply. Now, this is where she gets really practical. She says that to develop Catherine Ponder's, Catherine Ponder says to develop these, is there some writing exercises. She believed in writing, okay? Louise Hay also carried that forward in her books, which was after Catherine Ponder's time. And little did she know that neurologists would prove this process is highly effective. What happens when you write is you actually, and she doesn't mean just write the statement, she means write the statement as vividly as possible. So what happens is you're living it in your mind when you see it, because you have to write it, okay? So you have to see it and write it down. And then as you're writing it again and you're reading that statement out loud, you are living that experience all over again. So it's like how you put your imagination on steroids, how you connect to that thing. So you don't want to write about just getting a car, for instance. And I say car because that was one of my major manifestations. So you want to write about the particular car that you want. You want to get pictures of that car. You want to buy a model of that car. You want to stand in the mirror and talk about that car. You want to see yourself in that car. Even if you have to go to the dealership and take a picture of you in that car, and then you're going to write about it. So these are the work that you have to do around the things that you want to do in order to break the ties through the belief, the unconscious belief in poverty, so that you can get yourself into the prosperous lane. A lot of times, and a lot of the clients I work with talk about bills. There's always too much month at the end of your money. So if there's too much month at the end of your money, she says that you're supposed to give thanks for immediate and complete payment. She wants you to take that bill and write on that bill, I give thanks for immediate and complete payment. You are immediately and completely paid through the rich avenues of divine substance. Now imagine if you wrote that on every single bill. Now she also was a little intuitive because she says that if you have a lot of bills, make a list. So as we know now, a lot of us don't get paper bills. We have electronic bills. So you make a list of the bill, you list the name of the bill, the amount of the bill, and the date it's due. And underneath each one of them, you write that statement. I give thanks for your immediate and complete payment. You are immediately and completely paid through the rich avenues of divine substance. And if it's urgent, she says, then you include the statement, I give thanks that you are immediately and completely paid by this date. Now, when I first moved to Chicago, I had been homeless. I had a lot of debt. My first husband was incredibly generous and kind enough that he stole my identity and made a lot of debt on me. Just a kind gentleman. So I used to write the statement on those bills, and suddenly, just suddenly, it seemed, things would show up paid off, or I remember one on a phone bill, I got a refund. So it's so these things do work. Now, she goes further to say that you may have to work with these for a while. And she stated in instances where there was a particular client that had to work 3 years, but you may have to work on these a while. But they do work. She also says something incredibly important, and that's never write about or discuss your financial difficulty. And she quotes Isaiah 10:1 that says, woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and to the writers that write perversiveness. So it is considered perverse to write about it. Don't write about it. Don't talk about it. Find something good to talk about. And if people around you have to talk about that, you need to kindly excuse yourself from that conversation, because that is not a conversation you need to have. Unless, of course, you want more bills, more problems. Now, if you want more bills and more problems, then keep talking about it. She recommends daily that you write about or discuss how you wish your affairs to be. Now, if you've been to any of my workshops, you know I teach that you cannot outlive the level of your conversations. So, if your conversation is always a he done me wrong story or they did me wrong story, you're creating more he done me wrong and they done me wrong. Because that's what the universe hears. The universe doesn't hear, I don't like how they treat me. What the universe says, it's almost like you have to remember, it's like eavesdropping. It is, oh my God, they talk about that all the time. They must want more of that. Let me see what we can get together. Let me call their care team together, all their angels together, so we can get them more of that. Because that's all they see and all of the things that are surrounding them. They want to see more of that. So you need to talk about how it's going to be, what it is. When I do this, I am going to do this. Oh, when this book is a bestseller, my God, just think of the amount of lives that we're going to change. Those need to be the conversations that you have. And that is what she knew to be true back in 1962 when she wrote this book. Now, some of us have these huge problems because sometimes, you know, there was a rapper that says more money, more problems, right? So what he needed to do was, so in that case, if there are large financial matters, you need to write to the angel of that person. And she even gives you the script. To the angel of whoever that is, I bless you and give thanks that you are bringing to a perfect conclusion this business matter, and that all concerned are satisfied and blessed by it. She says, write this statement 15 times. She had a client write it 15 times because there's magic in the number 15, and this was taken care of within 2 weeks for that person. Now, my aunt used this technique. She had a principal when she taught at Dwight D. Eisenhower High School, and they just could not get along. They just butted heads. She couldn't do anything right. She says the way she parked was wrong. Everything was wrong. Everything was wrong with how she taught her kid everything. And one day she said she had just gotten tired of that. She was about ready that she was trying to figure out just how black she was going to have to be and just how much of her religion she was going to have to leave on the table. So instead, she decided to write to this guy's angel. Within a week, he called her in the office and she said, I was dreading it. But he said that for circumstances beyond his control, he was going to have to resign. So, I have used this statement for 2 bosses. And I ended mine with, God, either they can go or I can go, it don't matter, but one of us got to go. They both went. Okay? So this works. She also goes into talking about the imaging law of prosperity. And she says that any failure first started in the mind, therefore it can only be corrected in the mind. She talked about visualization. So she says create a mental equivalent in your mind using your imagination. And she says whatever the mind is taught to expect, it will build, produce, and bring forth. And she refers to Joseph's dreams because she says sometimes the result is immediate, but like Joseph, sometimes it just takes a little longer. So you have to imagine that it is already there. Now back in 62, they did what was called Wheel of Fortunes, and we know them as vision boards. The difference is on the Wheel of Fortune, at the very center is they would have an affirmative statement or a picture of their higher power. And then they would divide the board into how many levels. There's about 4 levels. So if you wanted to have a section about finances, a section about health, a section about family or social. And in those sections, you put pictures, but you also have to put an affirmative statement in those sections. And that's the statement that you go to your Wheel of Fortune every day, and you say that statement out loud for a total of 15 minutes a day. So I think somehow between the dynamic laws of prosperity and the secret, that part about the affirmative statement and talking about it was just kind of left out for ease because we are moving a little too fast. She also gives other suggestions and reminds us that our words are powerful. Now she recommends 15 minutes a day because she actually conducted a survey or a study with her class. And people who did it 15 minutes a day or 3 times a day for 5 minutes were able to actually manifest what they needed to manifest within the 4 weeks of her class. She also states that you need to describe it as vividly as possible. And there's been recent research that said that people who vividly describe or picture their goals are anywhere from 1.2 to 1.4 times more likely to accomplish their goals than those who don't. Now, we already know the research that was actually credited to Harvard, but it wasn't actually Harvard. It was actually done locally at the Dominican Republic University that says that those who write their goals down are 95 to 97% more likely to achieve their goals than those who don't. And of the 3% of those who achieve all of those goals, those are the ones who actually vividly picture having their goals. And you picture that however you need to picture that. If you have pictures that you look at, if you take pictures of your vision board, if you write it down somewhere, or if you look at a book, however you need to do what works for you. And also, there are some people who cannot physically visualize. There's a condition called aphasia. So in that case, use your computer, create a mind movie. PowerPoint even now lets you put images together and put music behind it and action so that you move movements behind it so it moves. So do whatever you need to do to get a picture. Neurologists continue to talk about what they call the generation effect. So the generation effect is the more you see it, the more you do it, the more your mind produces it, and once your mind memorizes it, your mind will produce it. So it produces it by giving you ideas. So we talk about saying yes, because sometimes the ideas are going to be kind of odd ideas, but if we say no to everything, the ideas can never come in. So you've got to practice saying yes to some things so that you can get the ideas. And once you've done that, then you will keep generating more and more ideas. You'll start seeing more and more things that will help you accomplish your goal. She also talked about dissatisfaction. She says that we have to do our part. And she asked, do you have a concrete goal in mind? And what are you doing to achieve your own goal? So, are you willing to take some of your leisure time and go to classes? Are you willing to do the research? Are you more interested in what's going on in social media than your own financial success? And I call it, what are you doing to win the Super Bowl of your own life? We spend a lot of time watching television, watching the Housewives, watching hip-hop, watching all those people on TV. We can have more conversations about the lives of what they're doing and know what they're doing than we have our own lives. So we need to turn that off and start working on our own lives, doing the things that we need to do. Even if some people have weight loss goals. So if you turn off TV for an hour and exercise for that hour, you'd be surprised. Now a lot of us try to exercise when we're watching TV. The issue is the mind can only do one thing at a time. It has been proven that multitasking is ineffective. And it causes you internal stress, it raises your blood pressure, and all of that other stuff. You need to be present in the moment if you're going to get the value of the moment. So how are you using your time? And she talked about people who were complaining. She said, being stuck in dissatisfaction limits our own prosperity. Petty thoughts, useless relationships, ill tempers, destructive emotions often result in ill health, discouragement, and failure. And to get off of the road of dissatisfaction, you just start by redirecting your thoughts. So you're going to have to concentrate on your higher ideal. So, because you have to remember, you are the spiritual architect of your life. And these are her words. You are the spiritual architect to build bigger pictures and larger good for your own life. So you need to visualize success so that you can get out of the mist of dissatisfaction. A lot of us like to talk about what other people aren't doing or what other people should be doing and how people did us wrong and how our bosses don't like us. And now all of that is dissatisfaction. We live in dissatisfaction and then we wonder why the other things don't come through. We have to clear that path of dissatisfaction because you can't send dual messages. You can't send a message that says, I want good, but I hate so-and-so. You have got what you want for you, you have got to want for everyone else. And don't worry about what they're going to do with it. Okay, because that part's not your business. You got to do what it is you want to do. So who cares if so-and-so seems to be driving the fancy car, wearing the great clothes, and we have no signs of how they create their income? Not our business. Our business is what we are doing and what we are working toward in our lives. And as the song said, let them see God in you through your deeds and through your actions and through that you do. Now, she talked about tithing, and this is only in the first half of the book, so we're just going to cover the first half of the book. So she talked about tithing. She says it's an ancient law of success. She says it's an act that puts God first in your life. It's an act of faith that moves the rich substance to the universe. And she says when you feel like you cannot afford to tithe, that is when you need to tithe. Because you are holding on to that money so tight that the universe can't show you where there's other ways to make money. And if you're not willing to help others, who do you think is going to come help you when you need to achieve your dream? Because even Jesus had 12 disciples. Okay, Jesus had 12 people helping him. So who's going to help you if you're not willing to help others? She also said that when you tithe, it sort of forces you into a space to cultivate larger ideas of increase and abundance. We generally don't do anything until we have to do something. You know, it's like if you were left family money and you're a billionaire already, it's like creating money is just what you do. You know, it doesn't fill your heart anymore. So you're not looking to create money. You're looking to maybe go cure malaria in the world, like Bill Gates, or put a computer in every school. Now all of a sudden you have larger ideas of increase and abundance. So once you can get away from needing finances and needing money, you'll be able to do more to help the world. And she says that if you can't start with gross, use net. And if you can't, and I say if you can't start with 10%, start with 1%. Start with what you have. Sometimes it's starting with a prayer, sometimes it's starting with tithing your time, depending upon your financial situation, but start with what you have right where you are. So now, listen to Gregory Porter, and Ken had no idea because the first thing I said is, oh God, this morning, I hope it's not Jim. But it was Gregory Porter, and he had a great line in that song that I like. It says, when the world's gone crazy and it makes no sense, there is only one voice and one person that comes to your defense. And that voice and that person is you. So with that, there's a little story I want to leave you with. So a man walks into a restaurant with a full-grown ostrich behind him, and the waitress asks for their orders, and the man says, hamburger, fries, and Coke. Turns to the ostrich, what's yours? I'll have the same, says the ostrich. Short time the lady returns with the order. That'll be $9.40. Man reaches in his pocket, pulls out the exact change for the payment. The next day, the man and the ostrich go back into the restaurant and says, I want a hamburger, fries, and Coke. And the ostrich says, I'll have the same. And again, he reaches in his pocket, he pays with his exact change. So the waitress, the next day he came in, the waitress realized that this was routine. It was Friday, and she says, well, what do you want? And she says, the same. He says, no, it's Friday night. I'm going to have a steak, baked potato, and a salad. The man says to the ostrich says the same, right? So he goes in his pocket, and he pulls out the exact change again, and the waitress cannot hold her curiosity anymore. She says, excuse me, sir, but how do you manage to always come up with the exact change in your pocket every time? And he says, several years ago, I was cleaning the attic and found an old lamp. When I rubbed it, a genie appeared and offered me 2 wishes. My first was to have whatever I needed to pay for, to have the exact change, that it would always be in my hand, in my pocket. And the right of money, no matter what it is, would always be there. And she says, that's brilliant, but most people would ask for $1 million or something. But he says, but you'll always be rich as long as you have exactly what you need in your pocket to pay for what you want. Then she got curious and she says, well, what about the ostrich? And he says, oh, that was my second wish, for a tall chick with a big butt and long legs who agrees with everything I say. So with that, I want you to remember to find a hill worth climbing and conquer it. I want you to make today so good that yesterday is jealous. And I want you to remember that life is too short to drink cheap champagne.
What am I supposed to do after that? Huh? I'm telling you, I like the chick. That was awesome. That was great. Okay, now is that time that we work the tithing principle that Reverend Doctor talked about so well and discussed so well to change our consciousness so well. And wow, such an uplifting message from Catherine. I don't get a lot So we will see that inside of our bulletin, those of us that have bulletin, there is a affirmation of truth that we use as we hold our gift in our right hand, placing it on our heart, the fourth chakra, envelope. And as we just move into a consciousness of abundance, together please. I now subconsciously release this money substance in the consciousness of agape, so that it may prosper this community. I consciously accept there is only one substance and one creative power, God. Money is God's idea of divine circulation for this community and in my finance. I am an inlet and outlet for this circulation. As I release it, I bless it, knowing that it comes back to me in known and unknown ways, multiplied, energized, and running over. Thank you, Mother, Father, God, for my increase. So it is, and all is well. Kendra, would you do it? Pick that. She's over there to make sure to follow. What? Yeah.
I'm not sure. Do you have another envelope for her?
Yeah, there's one over there. They're in blue bag.
Okay.
That's underneath.
She got one.
No, it's underneath that chair. It should be.
Oh, okay.
It should be. If it's not, it's in this box basket.
Just pass it. You need oh, you need the address.
Wow, he's really big. Make Daddy get 2 jobs to feed him. All right, as our custom, we want to extend our hands to join in consciousness. As we receive the energy that's already been delivered into each and every gift, and as we give that energy back to it, multiplying it, growing it, as it grows our finances. Each gift is already blessed. Each gift is already producing after its own kind. Each gift is returning to us as we have given. We thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. So it is, and all is well. So, how did the streaming go today, Regina? Everything went smooth?
Yes, as it should have.
As it should have. That was because the Reverend Doctor was up here and they knew not to act up. Okay. Now it's time for us to dismiss, to end this part of the service. On the back of your bulletin, those of you that have bulletins, is the prayer of protection. And that's what we use to release all the energy of this room into the universe. And remember, we're including our friends that have written their letters and are about to get answers to all of their requests that they made during the burning ball. Together, please. Divine
light surrounds us. Divine love enfolds us. Divine power protects us. Divine presence walks with us. Wherever we are, divine presence is. And so it is, and all is well.
our custom, we have 7 minutes to grill
That's right.
the speaker. With any questions that you might have, we'll set the timer and go at it.
Yes.
I got from the message breaking, kind of like breaking the walls of dysfunctionality in our lives, okay? From absorbing dysfunctional people there, stop doing dysfunctional things with what we got from God. I know you asked me what the question is. Here's the question. The question is, in so doing that, are we blocking, because from what I've seen in my life, when I put up a barrier to stop stuff, I'm actually stopping goodness or things that God has from getting into me. Is there a happy medium in there somewhere?
Well, you decide what the happy medium is. So what I would recommend is that you don't block things, you raise your consciousness. Once you're vibrating on a different level, then those other things can't vibrate up there with you. So it's Marianne Williamson once told a story. I shared that she was in class and a lady said, you know, I've been doing everything you said, but these no good men keep calling me. And she asked, that's not the problem. The problem is, why do you keep giving them your phone number? So when you know that someone is not on the same vibrational level as you, it's not what you want, it's not on your list of things that you're looking for, then you don't continue that relationship.
Okay.
Because it's keeping the right relationship from coming to you.
Understood. Understand.
You have to, you know, and the thing is a lot of us know when we enter in these, Eric Butterworth says, what happens to us is when we are on this path, everything is going like this, everything's wonderful, man. But at some point we get bored. So we go back and do those things that we used to do to create excitement. So we can do this, because some of us are addicted to the highs and the lows. So you have to ask yourself, do you want a smooth running path? If that's the case, you know what people to avoid. You got the message in your gut when they came up. Stop ignoring the messages that you get.
You gave a lot of information there. You also cited a few affirmations and prayers and stuff like that. Can you give us, next Sunday, can you provide us with a Cliff Note version of all of that so that we can apply them in our daily prayer work?
Yes, I can. And I actually have a list of various ways and techniques to use for visualization and affirmation that work too. So it's not just, so I use the senses when I teach visualization. But this is something that would not have been necessarily known or practiced in 1962 when she wrote the book. So I was trying to stay true to the basic principles, because I find when you stay true to the basic principles, you don't fail. But I do have a list of things you can do to see how you use your hearing, your sight, your vibration, your feel, taste, and smell. So I'll share those too.
And the second part of my question is, what do you do when you're on this path, as you say, you know, but you can't see the results? How do you continue to encourage yourself that this is all not for nothing?
So the one thing that what she talks about in the book, and there is an example that she gives about a lady who, she was teaching a class from Charles Fillmore's True Remedy, and one lady said, oh God, I'm going to go home and forgive everybody. And she said, well, good luck with that, because she doesn't think you should just try to do it all at once. She believes that you do it steps at a time. And she says that the lady finally showed up back at class about 4 weeks later, and she says, what's wrong? And she says, I don't feel good. I hated so many people. So, so start with one thing and then really focus on that one thing. Sometimes we try to manifest more than one thing. And if you're trying to manifest, sometimes we want to manifest health or money, because this is the key about all of it. It is all going into the same source. The same prayers you do for health, the same prayers you're going to do for prosperity, for the same prayers you do for prosperity, the same one for relationships. It is all interconnected. So sometimes we wear ourselves out because we think because if we're praying for prosperity, then we got to pray for health. But no, you can choose one. So just do one, work on one situation at a time. And the more research I read when I was doing this book, I found out one of my problems was you know, I like I'm an all or none kind of person. So I got 5 things wrong. By God, we're going to address all 5 things now. We're going to get all 5 things done. So what happens is nothing gets done. So when I started just focusing on one thing, I noticed a lot of other things were falling in place. So choose one, write out your statements, write to the angel of the person, which I know works. I even have an affirmative prayer of forgiveness of the people that I can share too next week that I do every day. That took about, and I have a manifestation time of about 6 weeks, so it took about 6 weeks. And I learned from Mary Tompkins that you need to know how long it takes you to create something. So you have to pay attention. That's why you need to do one. So then that way when you go for another thing, you know how long it's going to take. And how long it takes is just how long it takes. It doesn't make you a good person or a bad person. It's just how long it takes.
What was the most recent paradigm shift you've experienced?
So I have several things that I go back to. So I was homeless. So I had to deal with, and it's almost like sometimes it's like taking a bath. You almost have to wash that residue off every day because it's pieces of it that still come back. Even this morning, it's not like pieces of it still come back. So the paradigm shift that I'm making, which seems to be my stuck point, is am I good enough? And I know that lots of people have that, am I good enough? So growing up in America as an African-American woman with a lot of education, there was a lot of things that I used to believe, like I wasn't going to ever find a husband that was going to be worth anything, but I beat that odd, and all of that. So that's the one that I have to deal with. Is I have to remind myself when I look at the mirror now, which I didn't have to before, is that none of that matters. That's just the skin that is needed for this situation. That I'm here for my light to shine, and when I allow my light to shine, especially in my workplace, where there are a lot of African American people who are doing the same things, and I just take the idea that no matter how I came, God sent me here to help, and I've been able to be a tremendous asset, I think. At least they tell me I do. So that's my latest thing, is knowing my own value no matter how I'm clothed, no matter what my hair looks like, no matter my size, my skin, my language, just know my worth. But that's a continuing practice. That's not a place you arrive to. That's a journey. And it changes with each age group too, okay? So when you're now my age, and there doesn't seem to be any need for women my age, and you sit there and you say, it's a good thing you're married, because no more men don't want you no more, you know, it's like, so you sit there and you still have to find your worth. Because the message you get now at my age is that we should retire. So you still have to find your worth.
Last question. That was the 7-minute mark. Someone has one?
No, I was just struck by, and first of all, thank you for this. I was struck by how it resonates and connects with previous discussions and lessons that we've had in terms of speaking the affirmation out loud, you know, not just writing it down, but giving it a voice and then putting your heart with it and how that creates another different vibration. And I like the idea of adding an affirmation to the visual board and then saying, I mean, I just love the multiple layers of reinforcement and how when you actually take the time to write something down, you are inviting your brain to be impressed with the idea on a stronger note. So I really appreciate that.
So for this week, every time you all walk by a mirror, I want you to say 2 things. I love you, and call your name, and say, I am enough. That's all I want you to do this week. I want you to keep your eyes open, because you have to look for this stuff and see what changes you find in your life. You've got to be diligent and watchful. And let us know.
Okay, let's see. You're scheduled again to speak.
Guess we're going to do it once a month now. Yeah. Cable Access television show, and I posted the airing schedule for April online, and that is Mark Mendez, Body Code, is that. So we talk about the body code. So sometimes within all of this, you do have to do some energetic work. Now that's the kind of work that wasn't prominent in the 60s. People did it, but it was more like voodoo kind of feeling. Now it's just what you do. So he does really cool energetic cleansing. So that way you can clear your energy field. Because sometimes you need that help too. Thoughts become a body inside of you, and you need to get that body out. And that's a quick way to get it out if you find affirmations are working a little slower for you. So I try to do shows that will have topics that will allow people to change their minds, that have low cost to no cost, and they're easy to do. So we have our next taping on April 13th, and I may be reaching out for guests.
What's your website?
Oh, ChampagneConnection.com is my website, plus asipofInspiration.com is where the television shows are. And we do have a YouTube channel too, so you can find me, The Empowerment Doctor, I think. Or even my name, it'll come up in the YouTube channel. And I do have a new book that's coming out, Creating a Masterpiece from Master Mess. You can pre-order now from the Champagne Connection website. I am excited. This was a labor of love. I had a baby in 9 months. It took this book. No, I take that back. I had a baby in 7 months. This book has been 14 months long. I could have had 2 children.
Conference.
Oh yeah, the Ignite Your Inner Millionaire Conference is scheduled for September 7th.
Okay.
Yep.
And we'll have all that up on the website. We'll have a link
To your stuff on our web, on the Unity of Chicago South website. So we have to get that done. Please remind me this week. Either one of you remind me. I'll be working on that. Coffee is there. Those of you that came